I was ready to be a dad. I'm just going to leave it at that. I think there is certainly a misconception that to build a great game, you have to spend every ounce of your body to do it. We began a journey to make sure that we could actually have families and build a company at the same time. The way that we've built the studio is more about just a reflection of the kind of place that we want to work in.
You hear these stories about 80-hour work weeks that last for months and months, and I just can't accept that. It's a total failure of planning on the management and production side.
I've been in the industry in 7 to 8 years. Of course, I worked in the situation where I had to work until like 2 a.m. Very often, I didn't have any weekends for a whole summer, for example.
We established it early on where it's like the work hours are the work hours. If you want to spend longer, you can, but don't have it affect your life negatively.
Part of why our culture is good is because we took our time to build it. When I started this, I was 24 years old. We had 100 square feet for 4 people. I worked a ton and I learned just a mad amount of stuff.
Jamie, when I met him, he already had Eats going down and he wanted me to do a Flash game for Eats. So I programmed up the Flash game and did the art, and he was like, hey, the art's really cool, so let's start pitching games together.
At the time, Jeff was still working at Atomic Cartoons. So he actually worked 2 full-time jobs for like half a year.
I would wake up around 6, work maybe at Atomic until 3, and then come to Clay, work from 3 to about 11, maybe 10 some nights.
When he came in, I stayed with him so I could work alongside him. And at that time, I was still a programmer. So he and I were just like jamming it out. I would code and he would draw, and I would code and he would draw.
We would sit at night and come up with these game ideas. So we actually landed a game called Sugar Rush, which was kind of a arena battle fighting game where you could customize your characters. It had like RPG elements and stuff like that. It's kind of like Awesome Knots. So we pitched that to a company called Nexon, and we actually got that deal.
It was kind of like, here's an opportunity, here's something really fun, let's try something different. And he and I really hit it off. It was like really clear that he and I were we could work together really easily. We were really, am I allowed to swear? Is that something that's okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
We were really close to making this game come out. Like really close. We were 2 weeks away from going into open beta, where basically the world can play it. And Nexon North America Influence.
When they went down literally around us. People were like packing their stuff all around us. So we saw from like the insides of a big AAA studio a shutdown. We all kept on working because we were starting to make Shank at that point.
Shank was kind of in limbo for a while. We were self-funding, and then PAX hit. Everybody loved Shank, and that's when EA just wanted in. Before we had signed it, we were basically out of money. When we showed that demo, we basically showed all that we had. And that was 2 levels. We needed to finish 15 levels, including co-op, which we hadn't started yet. And we needed to finish all of that in like 2 months. It was the worst time of my life. That was the worst time.
With Shank, we were kind of running around, we were trying a whole bunch of different things, and it's time-consuming to experiment that way.
For the first time, I felt like I'm actually not going to be able to do the thing that I promised I was going to do. Pretty much right around Shank ended, I was like, well, if we're going to build a company, this can't happen. Every year there's been a few months where I'd come home for weeks at a time and Irene's already asleep. It was like, yeah, I need to make it work so that this doesn't happen. I never really wanted to stay at work till 2 a.m., whether or not there was a baby, I don't know. But it sure was an incentive to make sure it worked.
It would be very hard if he was still doing the 60, 70-hour weeks and I was alone at home with a baby all the time.
Having a kid is hard. Taking care of a kid is hard. And I didn't know how hard it'd be until the kid actually came. My most stressful part of the day, believe it or not, is my drive home, because I want to get home so quickly, because I know someone's waiting for me.
I have a 2-year-old son, and she, like, yeah, if I had to stay at work till 10 p.m. or whatever for weeks on end, it would be awful.
When you're 60 years old and looking back at this, you're like, oh, I wish I'd gotten that, achievement hooked up in that game, or, oh, my kid learned to walk and I wasn't there. Like which one are you actually going to regret?
When it comes to like structuring a company, we definitely wanted it to be stable and not work off like the cycle of a AAA studio where it's like, oh, we hire a bunch of people to do like a sequel of a game and then they let them go.
My goal was to build a company that could survive for many, many years. The only way that any company is going to be able to do that well is by retaining staff.
It's kind of funny, actually. When I first started, I was, and Shank 2 was done, I was like, all right, hopefully there's another project so that I don't have to like find another contract. And Jeff was like, you're an employee, you can stay. And I was like, oh, okay. I don't know this feeling very well.
I believe that most of the waste in game development is building the wrong thing. So I try to make us build the wrong thing quicker.
Don't starve. It pretty much came down to experimenting quickly, get it implemented quickly, and getting it out to the public, and like get that process to be really fast.
We had these restrictions around them. Like we said, okay, we want to ship within 6 months and get it out, but I also want you to do it without going overtime. And we just believed that it's possible. And that was the core part. It wasn't just like, I'm telling you, you need to do it. It's like everybody believed that it could be done. Every year we're still pushing new territory, like in the way that Don't Starve did, in terms of challenging how people think about games and challenging how people think about building games. What I want, and I don't know how long it's going to take, is that people look at Clay and say, well, they did it, and they did it without really much knowledge and experience before they started, and they own everything they've done. Maybe we can do that too.